in high school, if you would have told me later in life I'd be sitting in the same chair on the phone with Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, who's telling me a story and also telling me to hurry up because he just put dinner on the table. And I'm like, but this is when you told me to call you.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy at GhostCultBag.com. I am so stoked to be joined by band manager, author, and guy of 1,000 hats, perhaps, Greg Jacobs, author of the brand new book, and I'm going to read this so I don't fuck it up because I'm notorious for this. Hell on Wheels, Tour Stories Remembered, Remixed, and Remastered. I thought that was a great title. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pleasure, and a shout out to Mike at Earshot. We worked together for many years. It's always a pleasure. He works with, only the best top tier clientele, and I feel like you have a really interesting backstory to tell. If you don't mind, I always like to start with the comic book story Origin 1, and if this was your comic book life story, what would be the, how do you get to be Greg today?
Wow. I think I guess I should probably start it right around maybe freshman year of high school, which I'm pretty old. Like freshman year of high school for me was 1979, 1980. It's kind of when I discovered punk rock, was introduced to like the Germs and early stuff like that. Started going to the Cuckoo's Nest, which was a notorious club in Costa Mesa, California, where I grew up. And that really kind of set the path for me to, I mean, it took a while to figure it out, but that really is the kind of where everything started for me. And I decided like, if there's some way I can actually do this for a living, like not go to punk rock shows, but I mean, well, that'd be great too. But work in this industry somehow. Like first I thought I wanted to have a record store. Then I thought, well, maybe I want to work at a label. Maybe I want to do this. But I would say that was the origin of it. The very beginning was that.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that, your coming of age story is the same as the punk rock, Southern California punk rock story, which is, a lot of people's story. Not too long ago, I went to the amazing new punk rock museum in Las Vegas. I'm from the East Coast originally. I live in San Francisco now. I would never say I was a punk, but I admired the punks and the punk scene so much as a metalhead that I just ended up gravitating to punk people and sort of stowing away on punk adventures and punk shows and matinees on the East Coast. And that's how I got my introduction. But obviously the music is eternal, and I didn't even really know my first shows that like punks hated metalheads until like a couple years later we were all cool. But that was like my introduction was like, if you people see that Metallica shirt, they are gonna beat the shit out of you. And I was already getting the shit beat out of me at home. So I really didn't want to get the shit beat out of me outside of them. So I had to watch my ass and tuck my long hair under my hoodie and never take off my Yankees hat for a long time. And, I've been doing a lot of punk history, I think, lately. Like really, reading. I'm a big fan of Dan Hosey's books. I'm a big fan. I love Greg's book for Bad Religion. I mean, like, there's so many great storytellers here. But this is a really cool book, and I think this is it's not a novel idea. I think it's important. It's really cool that you were able to, use not use your relationships, but you have these friendships with people. I don't know if you did a cattle call for more content than you thought you needed, but I think there's like a tremendous plethora of artists, not just punks, metalheads, rockers. Like, it's really cool to hear stories directly from people. And I love that you brought that together. I know it says, I know it's kind of like you've curated this book more than you've written it yourself, but I think that's equally important is the curation process.
Yeah. Honestly, it was so much fun. Like, I'm a dorky fan. I mean, just bottom line, I love music. I love punk rock, and like the people that create it, whether they're my friends or whether they're not, they're still just like they're up on a pedestal somewhere to me. Just like in high school, if you would have told me later in life I'd be sitting in the same chair on the phone with Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, who's telling me a story and also telling me to hurry up because he just put dinner on the table. And I'm like, but this is when you told me to call you. Like, and then him not wanting to get off the phone and making suggestions on who else I should add to the book. and him even making calls helping me get. So it's like, and once you talk to Jello and Jello says, you really need to talk to Ian MacKaye, but you don't want a Minor Threat story. You want the Teen Idol story. Ask him about the Teen Idol story. So I emailed Ian out of the blue, and I got to say, Jello said I should reach out to you, which is true. And it was great. Ian was great too. Talking to him on the phone while he's riding his bike home from softball practice with his kid. I'm like, it's just mind blowing to me.
That's amazing. Jello lives in my town, and my dream is to just kind of bump into him casually and then rope him in. I can only seem to see him jump on stage with bands. Dead Kennedy songs. Last time was I was actually in Southern California for No Values Fest in Pomona in early June, and he jumped on a couple of times and also DJ'd. But I can't ever seem to get that one-on-one fan. I will fanboy out if I meet him one-to-one. I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose my. I already lost my credibility once in my career with Mike Muir, even though he forgave me and loves me. The ST guys like me apparently,
So
but he was like, "Yeah, your credibility's ruined with me." I told him about like a dream I talked about like a dream interpretation I had where I had like a suicidal tendencies dream that was very real. I woke up, I thought it had happened to me, and then I had to like figure out that it didn't happen to me and it was a dream. And he was like, "You on some shit, man? Do you do drugs?" I was like, "Not really. I'm just crazy and I love music."
Wow.
And you must love music. Like obviously that's the thing. Like you grew up in the music and you gravitated to the music. So obviously you had a lot of experience. You've managed bands, like you said. You worked at labels. You've been on the road. You've probably seen some of these things happen or seen similar things happen yourself. You could have written your own book, probably, I'm guessing, from just living the life for many decades. But in terms of like, obviously there's there's these big names in the book, but how did you have to whittle it down? What was the selection process like before you got to curate the sequence of the book?
It was interesting. This book actually came out in 1994, the original version, and there was no curation process at all back then. It was just like we worked. I say we because the publisher and I shared an office. And we worked right next door to the Casbah in San Diego at the time. So we would just march down the stairs, and whoever was sound checking, we'd ask them for a tour story and record it and then transcribe it. So there was it was kind of whoever we could get. And we were gathering the stories probably in 92 and 93. So social media wasn't that prevalent. If it was even around at the time, I don't even remember. But this was all like making phone calls and kind of hijacking people at soundcheck. When I set out to do the new version of the book, the first person I called was Gary, the guy that I shared the office with and that put out the first one, because first I wanted his blessing, and secondly, I just like Gary. We've been friends. We worked at SST together. Like we've been friends forever. And he said, "Here's what you got to do for the new book." He's all, "You make a dream list of who you want in the book and call every one of those people or reach out to every one of those people." We didn't do anything like that in the first one. So this one absolutely made a dream list to answer a follow-up question that's probably coming. Iggy Pop was number one. Through talking to Jello, I was able to reach Iggy's manager, who was really cool to me and said, he's all, "I love this idea. I'll present it to Iggy. And if I hear back from him, I'll let you know." But he gets, 100 interview requests a day. So the manager kept in touch with me and basically said, "Look, I didn't hear back from him, so it's not going to happen." But I knew at least I got pretty far with Iggy. And if there's ever another version of this book, I'm going to try again because I've got the line of communication now.
That is amazing. Even just to get in the doorway, that seems crazy. There's definitely quite a few people, a few chapters with people I've been fortunate enough to meet and talk to. Corey Parks and Caton from Hyrax come to mind early. But this is like a crazy murderers row. If you love rock music, whether you're a punk or not, whether you claim a scene or not, this collection is so diverse and it's so interesting. Like every story is like equally mind blowing. There's no filler here. Like they're all good.
Thank you.
If you're gonna do these book signings and maybe read a chapter, which is a very typical author thing to do, you're gonna have your hands full picking because like I wouldn't even know where to start to pick up a chapter as a sample.
So nice of you to say that. That's awesome. I do get asked frequently what my favorite story is. It sounds like a cop out, but I don't have a favorite story. So I find myself the I haven't done too many interviews because I'm really uncomfortable doing them, honestly. But the interviews that I've done, everybody has asked me that, and every time I tell a different story because it just depends on what pops into my head at the time. Because I not to be too rah rah. But I love every story in that book, and I've probably read it, with editing and looking for typos and all that. I probably read it 50 times at least. So, and I laugh every time at something. There's something in there that makes me shake my head and laugh or say, "Holy fuck, how did that really happen?" Like, like it's so yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, yeah, it's all good. I do some form of editorial every single day of my life, and so I'm used to reading other people's work as well as my own. And it's no easy task. And also just like when I played in a band, it's like, what's your favorite song? I was like, I don't know. It's like asking me my favorite taste bud or my favorite freckle or my
yeah.
favorite, my favorite blood cell in my body. I don't. How do I know? I mean, I can't. My favorite 10 bands changes every couple. Maybe they all stay the same and then they rotate, right? Like
Yeah.
who knows? And you've been so close to this obviously for a long time. So like no one could blame you for I don't think it's a cop out. I think it's it's a good answer because I've asked that question to other authors too, and they were the same. So like you're fine. The world. I always say the world's going to kick you down every chance it can. Don't help it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of the imposter syndrome and this negative self-talk too. But you're fine, man. You're fine. I think the value is that you made this. I think it's really cool. Like I said, we're in a really cool. On one hand, everything is on fire and horrible. At the same time, the availability of knowledge, the ability to go back in time, get in the time machine of our memories. I did some feature content recently, and I couldn't believe, like, even as messed up as I was in the 90s, how much recall I have of certain things and stories. And I got a very nice compliment recently myself on my storytelling. I would like to write a book someday, but like I'd have to literally quit everything else in life to do it.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of who I am. I have to just do everything 100%. Why I don't play music anymore. I can't do it 100%. So I don't want to do it at all.
Wow.
And even one of my best friends was like, "Why do you do this website? You must be out of your fucking mind." I was like, you're right. I am out of my fucking mind. I love music, and I played in bands for a long time, and it's probably just like you. Why does anyone get into management? Because you care. You want to help bands reach their potential. I think today, management, similar to AR, I think these are kind of lost arts. You see the truly great managed artist in any style of genre or any art, and you can see the benefit of the guidance of somebody, but I think it's just like A&R, a record label, it's becoming kind of a lost art. So what was the first band you managed, and how did you get into band management?
Just a little side note, if I may, you're relating band management to A&R is like when I stopped managing, the first thing I tried to do was become an A&R guy, and all the people that I knew in LA were like, "Yeah, we don't need you, but thanks." I was like, "It's a perfect like." You're either the manager outside the label or you're the manager inside the label as the A&R guy. I was like, this is perfect. And you'll pay me way more than I was making with the band. So let's do this. This sounds great to me. Overpay me and let me go to concerts, but it didn't work out. But so the first band I managed, it's a band called Big Drill Car. I was roommates with the singer Frank, who they started Big Drill Car and came home with a demo tape, and I really liked it. And they said, I think we need a manager. We need someone to help us do anything, even book show. That's what. So I said, you know what? I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll try it. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. We'll part friends. And so at the time, I was booking their shows. I was, managing whatever career they had. I helped them get their first record done. I ended up helping them get signed to Cruise Records, the subsidiary of SST. Also got a job at Cruise. I had a dual interview with Greg Ginn in his apartment in Long Beach. I was sitting on the couch and he was sitting there playing his guitar unplugged but still playing. And first I had to get over the fact that I was sitting at Greg Ginn's house. I'm all, that's the dude from Black Flag right there. Like, but so he interviewed me for the job at Cruise, which I got. And then I said, okay, now as the band manager, I want you to sign Big Drill Car. And that happened too. So it was a pretty productive meeting back there. It was probably 87 or 80. I think their record came out in 88. So it was right around that time. But that's how I started. They asked me to, basically. Big Drill Car asked me to manage them. And it kind of continued going forward. The other bands that I worked with, later in 91 or 92, I moved to San Diego to work at Cargo Records. And the first person I met there was John Reese, who was in Rocket from the Crypt and Drive Like Jehu. He was working at Cargo at the time. And I walked in, actually knew one other person there that helped me get the job. And he said, this is John. He's in those two bands that you love. And they both had just had their first records out. And I said, man, dude, I can't believe you're in both of those bands. You're amazing. And turned out we lived in the same part of town. One night he came to my house. I'm not to get too graphic, but I was laying on the couch in my boxers watching TV at about 10 p.m. And there's a knock at my door, and I was like, "Who's not?" I just opened it, standing there in my boxers. I'm like, "Who's?" And it was John, and he's all, "What are you doing? Get dressed. Let's go get a beer." So we walked around the corner to our favorite bar. He bought a beer, slid it in front of me, and said, quit your job and manage my bands. So it's never something that I was necessarily pursuing, but John knew my history with Big Drill Car and that I had worked at Cruise and SST, and we had a great working relationship for almost 10 years actually, which is pretty good run. And we're still friends, even though he fired me, we've been friends forever.
Well, yeah, that's fortunate. You can't. Unfortunately, as I'm fond of saying, I didn't trademark this statement, but people have heard me say over and over again, it's the music business, not the music friendship. Unfortunately, it's good that you're still friends. Another interesting thing to me, semi-related to the book, I always think of West Coast punk in eras, and so I think there's the early era when it was like very brand new and hungry and pure, and then there was kind of like a lull. And then when Bad Religion reunites ish and comes back better in 88, 89, I think of that as the beginning of kind of punk becoming mainstream popular because it led to, MTV, a lot of MTV videos, and Warped Tour eventually as a side related story. So I wonder to you, do you feel like this is just a continuous thread since you were in it and living it, or is it more like it's eras and phases?
Yeah, I can see that for sure. For me, it felt like one continuous thing of just like, what's the next thing I can do to pay my rent and still work with music? Is it management? Is it a label? I tell you, my parents, my dad specifically, who he just did not at all understand the music that I loved, but he was super supportive. So I mean, when I was working at SST, making like $1,000 a month, I had quit school to go work at SST because the opportunity came up. And my dad, after about a year, my dad said, "Look, I'll pay you the salary that you're making now, and I'll pay for school if you quit SST and go back to school." That's a pretty hard offer to say no to. So I did that, and when I did that, I graduated Cal State Fullerton in '91, and that's when I got a job at Cargo and moved. So I kind of resumed the indie label thing and immediately moved down to San Diego. But yeah, it's an interesting because there's like the early stuff that I still have a very soft spot in my heart for, like the early LA Orange County stuff, like not only the Germs, but a little bit later. You had Bad Religion back then, Adolescence, TSOL, Black Flag, all those, even the smaller bands that I love, like China White and the Chiefs and stuff like the Simple Tones. God, I loved that band. But the Crowd. I felt like that, for me anyway, kind of just blossomed right into the later 80s where I started with Big Drill Car. We were friends with the guys from MIA, where two of the Big Drill Car guys came from, and Mike from MIA lived down the street from us. And then, I mean, next thing I knew, touring bands were sleeping on our couch. And like, so it to me, it's like musically there's differences, but man, it's just been one ride kind of.
I like that. I like that one ride. That makes a lot of sense. Out of curiosity, like as a huge obsessive Bad Religion fan, I immediately went right to that chapter because I'm crazy, and I was like, I have to see what that story is. What's the story in the book, or a story not in the book, that has surprised you or shocked you the most? I guess we don't want to give away the whole book here in this interview,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's a good question to ask that we may not have been asked before.
Yeah, no, that is a good question because I don't have an answer ready for you. So, what was the most, well, I mean, just generally like shocking, not shocking that the story's about a car crash, because of course you're touring in a van across the country, there's going to be car crashes, but the story of the Bronx, the Mercedes ending up like upside down on their roof, I think, of the van with one of their with one of the band members sleeping in the van because that's standard operating procedure. Someone sleeps in the van so the gear doesn't get stolen, supposedly. But that story of of that car crashing into the van, landing on top of the van, the driver trying to get away, and then Matt, the singer, getting in a fight with them after, like to try and hold them for the police to come. And then at the very end, wherever that was, I don't remember now, Kansas or Kentucky or somewhere like that, it's a no fault state for the accident. So they couldn't even sue the guy to get money for their band. Like that was just living through that. And with Joby telling me that story, like it was, my jaw was on the floor the whole time. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's just a car crash, but it's insane.
Wild, wild stuff. I'm glad that everybody made it out okay because we
Yeah.
lost so many people along the way, and bands are getting robbed and bands are getting crashed all the time. And at least we have air tags now. We can't do anything about no fault insurance states and things like that. But air tags,
Yeah.
don't leave your van unattended, and pay someone to stay with the van because
Yeah.
it's just so terrible. And I feel like a lot of these bands are even in the best case scenario on the biggest labels with management and merch and everything. Just the demoralization of getting your stuff robbed has got to be just a soul killer when you're on tour, supposedly working at your job and trying to have fun and meet your fans and bring your music out to people, and then you get robbed. It's got to just kill you inside.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I've been fortunate with the bands that I worked with that never happened on tour. We did have a practice room broken into and everything stolen out of it in San Diego, but never on tour, which is nice. Although I think John had a guitar stolen, like at a gig, but other than that, like no one broke in and stole everything, which is, I guess, lucky.
Well, thank goodness for little miracles.
Yeah,
I want to wind this down and give you back your day. I just have a few more questions for you. You've been
sure.
terrific. What would you say you have learned the most from the experience of putting out?
Wow, another good question. I started reading again, honestly, because not much of a reader, so I kind of relearned my love of reading, and now like you said earlier, I don't remember if we were on or off the air, but your love of music books and man, well, I'll just show you. Look, this is just a stack of books that I've recently read, and they're all music books. Uh, so I read, I take the time and just read a couple hours every weekend. That's kind of when I have time to do it, and it's always a music book. In fact, I just finished on Sunday. I finished Mike Roach's book, the guy from TSOL, which is great. I highly recommend it. Very kind of raw, and you could just tell it's not super. It's not polished. It's just what Mike was thinking at the time, and I think it's really cool, and it comes across really well. So I would say that's one thing. I definitely learned to love to read again because I'm one of those people. I'm a slow reader, and so I used to not like to read just because I like to make progress, turn pages, and if I'm reading a book and just like feels like a slog, I just won't finish the book. So I really that's one of the things I learned is that I love reading and that I hate small type faces in books. I made sure in mine, I said, you make sure, I told the guy that laid it out, I want giant type in that book, not because I can't see it, but I want to turn pages when I'm reading it.
Right on. Thank you from all the poorly sighted folks in the world, myself included. I need a new script for my reading glasses. I actually have the Jeff Drake book on my list. I didn't have any of those other books, and I'm not at my home at the present time, so I can't show you my pile of books. But the current book that I'm reading, I got off of TikTok of all places, and it's
Wow.
based on a blog about emo and the history of strictly 2000s emo, 2000s to 2000 teens, I guess. Emo, Say the Quiet Part Out Loud, by an awesome young author. What an eye opener that is! I was an observer mostly on the outside, loved the bands, didn't have the swoopy hair. I was a long haired metal guy until 10, 15 years ago, and I still have just a fat bald metal guy now. It is what it is.
That's
Just
great.
last, yeah, just for a last thing. Just thinking about your whole career in music, and obviously this book stirring up a lot of memories and great stories, and maybe inspiring you for some further things. Do you think there will be a volume two eventually? You could theoretically continue this if you want to, or are you gonna just let this ride for a while and live with the book for a while in the world once it's out?
You know, that's one thing that I've been asked a lot. Like, when's the next one coming out? It's like, man, this one took, well, this one, there's a number of different reasons that this one took so long, but I worked on this book for 2 to 3 years gathering these stories. Um, a lot of it wasn't because it took so long, but there was COVID. There were just other things. I had a day job, 2 day jobs, actually. I'm a photographer and I sell insurance and I'm trying to write a book. So it just wasn't a priority. So it took a long time. If there's another one coming, I can't imagine it taking that long. I can't imagine having that much time to do it. But I'll tell you that I've already started a list of bands that I didn't put in the first book that I should have. So I already have a list of about 20 bands, and I'm like, how could I have not talked to the adolescents or the whoever, like just some of my favorite punk rock bands, not necessarily big bands, but or huge bands anyway. But I definitely go back to Iggy if I could. I mean, I would definitely go back to Iggy. And the one, my favorite band since day one has been Stiff Little Fingers. And I asked Jake Burns directly through Facebook Messenger, and he replied quickly. I told him what I was doing, and he said, I really feel like tour stories are better told than written. And he said, and I feel like I've told all mine. So I was like, all right, fair enough. I'm like, I totally geeked out on him too. I was like, look, you've been my favorite band since 1980. It's 2022 or whatever year it was when I asked him. Like, seriously, I've seen you a billion times. We have mutual friends, actual like real friends. You can check me out. I'm not a douche. And he still didn't want to give me a story. But I would go back to him too if there's another volume, just because I gotta push it a little bit.
And there you go. Confirmed 100% not a douche. Greg Jacobs. So awesome. This is so much fun for me personally. And I hope that our fans here at Ghost Cult Mag appreciate these stories you tell today. Hell on Wheels, Tour Stories Remembered, Remixed, and Remastered is coming out from University of Hell Press at October 25th. And we're going to hype it up between now and then. And I just thank you so much for spending the time and humoring me today. And here's some free advice. If No Values Fest comes back to Pomona or Punk in the Park, I just saw is coming your way, talk to the press people there, and just literally you could bang out a bunch of interviews in a day.
Yeah.
That's what I do. That's how we do it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.